For almost 100 years, we've had a miracle weapon against bacterial infections, antibiotics. But what happens when that miracle just stops working? We are right on the edge of a global health crisis that could throw us back to a time before these life-saving drugs. So let's dive into a radical, totally new strategy in this ancient war.
You see, antibiotics, the absolute cornerstone of modern medicine, they're losing their punch. Bacteria are just evolving way faster than we can invent new drugs. And this has led to the rise of these multidrug-resistant superbugs. And listen, this isn't some far-off threat. They are here, right now, making common infections potentially deadly all over again.
In the future, it looks pretty grim if we stay on this path. Projections are showing that by 2050, what's called antimicrobial resistance, or AMR, could be responsible for 10 million deaths every single year. To put that into perspective for you, that's more than cancer and diabetes combined. The clock is absolutely ticking, and we desperately need a new playbook. This really calls for a complete shift in how we think about this. I mean, our current approach is basically a scorched earth policy, right? We try to kill every last bacterium, but all that does is encourage the toughest ones to survive and multiply. So what if we could disarm them instead? What if we could just switch them off so they're no longer dangerous? To do that, first we have to understand how the enemy defends itself. And one of its absolute best strategies is something called a biofilm. The best way to think about it is like a fortified city built by bacteria. They're all encased in this slimy matrix of sugars and DNA. And inside that fortress, they are incredibly resistant to our antibiotics and even our own immune systems. So how do these tiny single-celled organisms pull off something so complex? Well, they talk to each other. Yep, bacteria use this really sophisticated chemical language called quorum sensing. You can think of it like a bacterial roll call or a census. It's their way of counting their own numbers to decide when it's time to act as a group. And the process itself is surprisingly simple, but it is so powerful. Individual bacteria release these tiny chemical signals called autoinducers. As the population gets bigger and bigger, the concentration of these signals goes up. And once it hits a certain point, what scientists call a quorum, it triggers this massive coordinated change. It's like a switch flips, and they all turn on their attack genes at the exact same time, unleashing toxins and building those impenetrable biofilm fortresses. Now that communication system is their greatest strength, but it might just be their greatest weakness too. The new strategy isn't to kill them, it's to hack their network. The idea is, if we can disrupt their ability to talk to each other, we can stop them from ever launching that coordinated attack in the first place. And this is the crucial difference. Antibiotics are a blunt instrument. They just kill bacteria, which puts this immense pressure on them to evolve and become resistant. Quorum sensing inhibitors, or QSIs, they're completely different. They're what we call an anti-virulence strategy. They just block communication. They effectively disarm the bacteria without killing them, which means there's way less pressure on them to evolve resistance. So how do we actually pull this hack off? Well, there are two main ways. First, there's signal degradation. We can use enzymes that basically act like tiny paper shredders, destroying the bacteria's chemical messages before anyone can read them. The second method, which is maybe even more clever, is receptor interference. With this one, we use these tiny molecules that are designed to slip right through the bacterial cell membrane. Once they're inside, they find the specific receptors for those chemical signals and just block them. It's literally like putting superglue in a lock. The key, the signal, can't get in, and the message to attack is never received. And get this, it turns out we're not the first ones to think of this. Nature has been playing this game for millions of years. Plants especially have evolved their own ways to disrupt all this bacterial chatter. And a fantastic example is a compound you probably have in your spice rack right now, curcumin. Yeah, curcumin, the stuff that makes turmeric yellow, is an amazing natural QSI. It's especially good against really dangerous pathogens like Pseudomonas aeruginosa. What it does is it gets inside the bacteria and it directly blocks those communication receptors. This stops the bacteria from turning on their attack genes, which means they can't form biofilms or produce nasty toxins. And here's the key part, it does all this without actually killing the bacteria, which, again, helps us avoid that whole problem of creating more resistance.
So this brings us to the big picture. These strategies, they offer incredible hope for a whole new era in medicine. But it's not a silver bullet. There's still some pretty big challenges we have to figure out before this becomes a treatment you can get at the hospital.
The potential benefits, though, are just immense, especially for patients with those persistent, really hard-to-treat infections. Think about people with cystic fibrosis who are constantly battling lung infections, or people with infected medical implants.
For them, QSIs could finally break down those stubborn biofilms, maybe even making old antibiotics effective again. It would mean lower, safer doses. It could truly be a game changer.
But, okay, we have to be realistic about the hurdles. Just getting these inhibitor molecules to the right spot in the body is a major challenge. That biofilm isn't just a chemical defense, it's a physical barrier. And even though the pressure is lower, bacteria are endlessly adaptable. They might still find a way around this. We also really need to understand what happens to all the good, beneficial bacteria in our bodies when we start silencing these channels. Which leaves us with this really profound question. Are we on the verge of a new age of medicine, where we learn to manage our relationship with bacteria instead of just constantly fighting them? A future that's built not on overwhelming force, but on clever diplomacy. A future where we learn to outsmart bacteria, not just obliterate them.